Can y'all tell me when you see me? If you see me, oh, cloud fell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh man! Wow. Okay.
I don't know.
Shoot! Can you hear me on the YouTube? On the YouTubes?
I don't know that you're coming.
I think it's not. Yeah, it's delayed over there.
It's delayed. Yeah, obviously it should be, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works. Okay. Welcome to Rise. We had some technical difficulties tonight, even though I feel like I've done this a million times, but you never know what's going to happen on live TV, people. So here we are, Rise, September 30th, 2020, live from St. Lawrence. Okay, great. Thanks for the crowd that's like hacking me up, because this is a very stressful past 30 minutes of my own life personally. If you don't know who I am, my name is Emily Laiza. I work at the St. Lawrence Center. I oversee Good Company, which is a group that puts on this event, and we do this once a month at the end of the month. And tonight, just like every Rise, we'll have a speaker and some time of worship where you can pray and then be with your friends or whoever you're with at home. Tonight is a special night. We're going to be talking about what gets you out of bed in the morning. Look, my phone just went off, so that's funny because I was in such a rush to get up here that I didn't even mute it. So here we go, live, love it. So we're talking about what gets you out of bed in the morning. And when I was thinking about that this past week, I was thinking about, okay, what got me out of bed when I was an undergraduate student? And the memory that came to mind was my roommate and I had bunk beds, and I had an 8 a.m. and a 9:30 back-to-back. And so if I missed my 8 a.m., I also missed my 9:30. I either made them both or I missed them both, regardless of how many times my alarm went off. I never got up for the 9:30 if I didn't get up for the 8 a.m. And most mornings I wouldn't get up, and my alarm clock also was the ringtone teaching me how to Dougie. So that's a little telling of my age and also my taste of music at the time. So that would go off about a million times because I would never turn off my alarm. I would just snooze it one after the other. And so most mornings I woke up to my roommate on the bottom bunk lifting her legs up and kicking the top bunk as hard as she could. And that's how I woke up most mornings when I was an undergrad. So I don't know what gets you out of bed in the morning. For me, it was my roommate kicking my bed because I was too lazy to get up myself. Hopefully tonight, John Michael, he's going to be speaking about that topic. Hopefully he has some more tips for us on how to get out of bed in the morning or what motivates you during your life. But tonight, John Michael, he's our director of Focus, which leads a lot of Bible studies and small group programs at St. Lawrence. So if you're interested, shoot us a comment. We'd love to get you plugged into that. John Michael is outstanding. I was telling my team, the GoodCo team last night, that literally he could come up here and talk to you about why he chose whatever shoes he's wearing today, and you would probably get something out of that talk because that's how good of a speaker he is. We're really excited to have him. And so without further ado, and me, Gavin up here, we want to invite John Michael up to speak to us tonight and just give him a round of applause from our coach.
All right, thank you, Emily. So like Emily said, my name is John Michael Lucido, and if it doesn't confuse anybody, my first name is John Michael, and my last name is Lucido, and I don't have a middle name. So that caused a lot of problems growing up, because people would say, oh, what's your name? I'd say, oh, my name's John Michael, and they'd say, oh, nice to meet you, John. I was like, oh, but my name's John Michael. And they'd be like, oh, absolutely, yeah, thanks, John. And anyways, it was very frustrating, but like Emily said, my name is John Michael, and I am the team director of Focus, which stands for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. And me and my wife, Emily, who is also a missionary here with the St. Lawrence Center, have a beautiful daughter who's 11 months old. Her name is Eden Claire. And then we also actually have another little baby due March the 10th. So it's a very exciting time for our family. And right now we are having a very hard time getting out of bed in the morning because our daughter, who is almost a year old, still wakes up 3 times a night. So I thought it was funny that Emily asked me to give this talk because It's what gets you out of the bed in the morning, and usually it's my 11-month-old daughter screaming from her bedroom is the answer. Emily has asked me to touch on this topic of what gets you out of bed in the morning, and I think it's a good one, perhaps because as college students, getting out of bed is usually one of the hardest things about the day. And when I was thinking about this, I thought about a time in particular where probably my most memorable getting out of bed in the morning story. And the situation was I was a freshman in college at Texas A&M University, where both me and my wife Emily graduated from. And I was really struggling in school. I had a really hard time freshman year making it to class, which turns out is a key aspect of doing well academically. I found that out later in college. Key aspect, Will. And so I was really struggling, and I actually, this semester, this was the spring of my freshman year, I had already automatically failed 2 courses because it was numerically impossible for me to take the final and get a D or a C. And I had 3 other courses left. And so going into finals, I was locked into 2 Fs, and the other 3 were up in the air with not a great chance of succeeding. But one of them was Economics 201, entry-level business course taught by a Russian lady who I don't remember her name because I never could understand it, even in an entire semester of going to her class. Economics 201. And the final was worth about 30% of the grade, and I had about a 67 going into the course, which is a D, and I really wanted to get a C. And my aspirations were high. And so the night before, I have great study habits and basically pull an all-nighter until about 4 a.m. And I decided I'm going to get a little bit of sleep. And so I laid my head down, and finally I'm like, okay, 4 a.m., I'm going to go to sleep. Of course, I set 3 or 4 alarms, 1 on my watch, 2 on my phone, and make sure that my roommate knows if I'm not up by 10 a.m. by the time of the final, please get me up, okay? So 6 hours later and 30 minutes, which if you can do math is 10:30, I wake up. 30 minutes after the final has started, and I have a D in the course. So I pop out of bed, I say some words that I shall not repeat on live stream, and bolts out of bed. I'm 30 minutes late into an hour and a half long final. And I run from my dormitory to the other side of campus with my pajamas on, no shoes, no test. All I have is the calculator in my hand. I sprint across campus at 10:30 in the morning with no shoes, still in my pajamas. And I bust through the doors of my class halfway through the entire final. And of course, it's like the 300-person freshman economics class. And all 300 people turn around and look at me. And I walk up to the professor. I'm profusely sweating because it's May in the state of Texas, so it's like 95 degrees already. And she says, "Oh, you're late." And I said, "Really?" And I said, "Is there any way I could retake the test? Is there any way, please?" And she goes, "You showed up for the exam. You have to take the test." And so I have 40 minutes to take the entire final. Long story short, I failed the final, failed the class, and finished the spring semester of my freshman year with a 0.7 GPA, which people have higher blood alcohol contents than my GPA. It was that bad that semester. And so that was probably my most memorable getting out of bed instance in college. Most of them were on their way up from then on out. But when I was thinking about what gets you out of bed in the morning, I was thinking about that morning. And I was thinking about the urgency to which I got up. I mean, I literally probably jumped straight from my bed to the floor, if you've ever experienced that sense of lateness. There was a great urgency, right, when I got out of bed in the morning. There was a task that needed to be completed, which was not failing the course, which I failed at. But there was an urgency to the situation, right? There was a purpose for why I needed to jump out of bed, was to make it to that exam, right? And so what gets us out of bed? What is the reason that we get out of bed? Well, I think an easy answer is purpose. What's your actual purpose for getting up out of bed? And so we need to tonight identify what that purpose is, right? Have you guys ever heard the phrase, "What's your why?" What's your why? Have you heard about this? Very popular phrase right now. And there's a TED Talk on it called "What's Your Why?" And it's the second most viewed TED Talk right now on TED Talks YouTube series. This is not a plug for TED Talks. They're really good, but this is extra. They're not paying me to say these things. But they're really good, and I've watched it. And it's the second most watched TED Talk, and there's a lot of really good TED Talks, right? They touch on literally everything. Why is it the second most? Because we as a people and we as a community have lost the sense of a purpose, right? We no longer have a purpose for our lives, right? If you look at one of the most purchased books of the past 20 years, it is A Purpose-Driven Life. Maybe you've heard of it, right? Pretty obvious, a purpose-driven life. So the second most popular TED Talk, What's Your Why? And one of the most famous books of the past 20 years, all about purpose, all about what's your why. And I think this is really telling once again because right now, our culture, and especially college students, we're struggling to find meaning and a purpose, right? And I experienced this during quarantine, and I think many of us did too, right? Is you went home April, May, and you go to bed at 4 a.m., right? Because you don't have to get up for class in the morning. And your alarm goes off at, let's be generous and say 10 a.m. And then you look at it and say, I have no purpose for getting up because I'm locked inside my house all day. So I might as well sleep for 2 more hours, right? Why did you sleep for 2 more hours? Well, because you didn't have a purpose. You didn't have a meaning, right? And that's something that's plaguing, especially our generation right now, is a lack of purpose and a lack of meaning. So one of my favorite movies of all time is the major motion picture Saving Private Ryan, okay? Starring the best actor, Forrest Gump, and his companion, Jason Bourne. Anybody? Get it? Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, Forrest Gump, Jason Bourne. Okay. There's only a couple people in the crowd, so that's why you didn't hear a crazy amount of laughter. But I know there's a crazy amount of laughter. So that's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's an incredible movie. If you've never seen it, you should. And it's about a group of men that formed a company in World War II. Obviously, World War II, super deadly affair. And the whole concept of the story is that there's this one family called the Ryan family. And the Ryan family have a group of what I believe is 4 sons. 4 sons that are all fighting somewhere in World War II. And of those 4 sons, 3 of them have died in battle. 3 of the sons. And so the person who's in charge of the U.S. Army learns about this mother who's lost 3 of her 4 sons in the war. And he sends out a command to bring the 4th Ryan home. To bring Private Ryan home. To save Private Ryan. Okay. And so the whole entire movie is about this company of U.S. soldiers that their entire job throughout the war is to find this man named Private Ryan and to bring him back to his mother because he's lost all 3 of his brothers. It's an amazing movie because this company of men, they go through these crazy ordeals to find it. Perhaps the best scene is one of the final battle scenes where they're in this crazy assault with the German troops in the city. And they're literally laying their lives down. Men in this company are dying just to find this one man and to bring him back to his mother. It's the whole concept of the movie. And it's one of the greatest concepts of all time. And my big takeaway from watching Saving Private Ryan is the purpose and the meaning to which that company fought. Right? They had this desire and this conviction that this one life, that Private Ryan's life was so important that they would be willing to do anything to save his life, right? Their purpose was so strong, their meaning of their mission in World War II was so strong that they were willing to do anything to just save this one man's life. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that if our meaning and our purpose is strong enough, we can do anything, including getting out of bed. So the next question is, what is the purpose that we should have? What is the meaning which we should have? Because there's a lot of purposes and there's a lot of meanings that we could have. But what is the best purpose behind getting out of bed? What is the best meaning? And I want to tell two specific examples to illustrate this point, right? In high school, I played high school baseball, and on game day, I had no problem getting out of bed in the morning, right? Absolutely no problem. I was ready to go, ready for game day, so excited, right? Then, on Saturdays, my parents would make a chore list. I don't know if y'all's parents ever did that, where you walk in and there's a piece of paper with like 15 chores to do. And so on Saturdays, I knew that chore list would be there. And my purpose that day for getting out of bed was to not do the chore list, right? And so am I going to get out of bed? Absolutely not. And so there's both good purposes and there's bad purposes to get out of bed. And so we can identify that and now center in on the good purposes and what I think is the best purpose, okay? And so for that, what I want to do now is I want to look at the Bible, specifically Matthew chapter 3, to look at what is our purpose, what is our meaning. So this comes out of Matthew chapter 3, and it's called the baptism of Jesus in the Jordan. And right now, it is my favorite gospel passage. So here's the scene. Jesus has been born in the stable. He grows up for 30 years, lives with his mom and dad, Mary and Joseph, and he hasn't even begun his public ministry yet. He's about to spend 3 years healing people, saving people, calling disciples to follow him, engaging the crowds, but he hasn't done anything like that yet. He's just starting out. And this is where we pick up Matthew chapter 3, verses 13 through 17, if you want to follow along at home. Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to John, to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? But Jesus answered him, Let it be so now, for thus it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he consented. And when Jesus was baptized, he went up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And lo, a voice from heaven, saying, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. I'm just going to go back over a couple of verses there. And when Jesus was baptized, he went up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And lo, a voice from heaven, saying, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. So, what's happening? The Father, Jesus is baptized. God the Father is speaking to God the Son in this moment, and he says, This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Right? Why is this profound? Why is this powerful? Why does this give us meaning and purpose? Well, let's think about it, okay? This is what God the Father says, that you are my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. So the question is, what is he pleased in? What is the Father actually pleased about with Jesus? Okay? Why is he pleased in him? Well, some of you may say, well, it's because, he was about to do all these amazing things. I would say you're wrong, because he hasn't done any of these amazing things yet. You know what he's done up to this point? He's been a 30-year-old man who lived with his parents his entire life. He's a failure. He's a failure by culture standards. But God the Father says, you are my beloved Son with whom I'm pleased with. So what is he pleased in? Is he pleased in him because he's going to bring all of these people to follow him for 3 years? He's going to call the 12, the 72, the 500. He's going to feed the 5,000. He's going to heal many, many people. He's going to bring the dead back to life. He's going to die on a cross to save the culture of humanity and thus start the greatest religious movement of all time. That's what he's pleased in? No, you'd be wrong. Because he hasn't done anything yet. None of this has happened. We're in Matthew chapter 3, and there's 28 chapters in Matthew. All the good stuff is the next 25. So what could the Father possibly be pleased in him for? Well, let's look. This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. What's he pleased in? He's pleased in the fact that he's his son. That's what he says. This is my beloved son with whom I'm pleased in. Not because he's done anything. Not because of what he's going to do. And if there was someone to be pleased in for what he was going to do, this would be the guy. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that he's his son. And when I read this, I think back to a very special memory from childhood of my father being pleased in me. So my dad was my baseball coach my whole life. He played college baseball, and I always wanted to be just like him. And he was my baseball coach, and I was in third grade, and I was on second base. And there was a ground ball hit up the middle. Game's tied, last inning. My dad's coaching third base. I'm on second, and I'm running to third. My dad's waving me home, right? About to win the game-winning run. He's waving me home, and I'm dead sprinting for home. And my dad, I look over, and my dad's so excited that he's running every single step of the way with me to home plate. I slide in head first to home, look at the umpire, he says safe, we win the game. And my dad picks me up, holds me in the air, and says, son, I'm so proud of you. You did it. I'm so proud of you. And when I think of that, I think about that moment. But it's even more profound than that moment with my dad. Because my dad was proud of me, yes, because I was his son, but also because I had just won the game. What's happening here is so much more profound in that moment because God the Father is saying that it doesn't matter what you do, I really love you because you're my son. And what's amazing about this is that he says the same thing to each one of us. By the merits of our baptism, he says, John Michael, you are my beloved son with whom I'm well pleased in. You have done nothing. It doesn't matter what you do. I will always be pleased in you. And he says this to each one of you. He says, I'm so pleased in you, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. And I can't say it enough. That's what the Father is pleased in us for, by the fact that you are his daughter and the fact that you are his son. That's what he loves about you. Now, how does this give us purpose? How does this give us meaning? How does this get us out of bed? Well, our deepest identity is that we're sons and daughters of the eternal King, sons and daughters of the eternal Creator. That's our deepest identity. And so our purpose always comes from our identity. Here's what I mean. If you're a professional golf player, that's your identity. And your purpose in life is to play golf because your identity is a golf player. Does that make sense? Or if you're an accounting major, that becomes your identity. All of a sudden, accounting major is my identity. My purpose is to do accounting. Or I am, what's another example? I'm a barista. That's my identity. And so my purpose is to make coffee, right? It's the same way. My identity is to be a son, so that gives me purpose. What's the purpose? To please my Father, right? Which is something that we can all understand, hopefully. So how does this get us out of bed in the morning? Well, if I'm a son with whom the Father is well pleased in, then what gets me out of bed, what gets John Michael out of the bed in the morning is knowing that I have a Father in heaven who's pleased in me, his son, and I want to serve and love my Father with every single ounce of my being that day. That's what gets me out of bed, and here's why. If the Father gave me such an amazing gift that he calls me his son, then I want to return that as much as possible. So for you little girls in the room, not little girls, women in the room who were once little girls is what I meant. I'm so sorry. Just to clarify. Did you ever paint something for your dad growing up as a little girl? Paint, put on a dress or something and go in front of him and say, Daddy, how do I look, right? You're trying to please your dad, right? You're trying to get him to tell you like, hey, this is amazing. You're not making the painting to earn his love. You're making him the painting because you love him. Right? You're not saying, hey, you're going to love me more if I make this painting. What you're saying is, I know that you love me, and so I want to give you this painting as a sign of my love for you. You feel that? Okay. I'm getting some nods. This is how our identity as sons and daughters becomes our purpose for getting out of bed in the morning. If my identity is that I'm a daughter of God, then I want to paint a beautiful picture with my day to hand back to my Father at the end of the day. Hey, Daddy, here's what I did for you today. Not because I had to, not because I'm gonna prove to you that I'm lovable. You already love me. But my response to your love is what I do with this day. My response to the great gift of my identity is how I live out of that identity today. And that is how our identity gives us meaning and purpose for getting out of bed in the morning. I want to end tonight with one story. It's a story about an old Jewish rabbi. It's kind of folk tale. But there's a Jewish rabbi who had a group of disciples, so people that were following him as he hiked through the Israeli countryside. And so he's walking through the Israeli desert, and he's coming up to this town, and his disciples are following him. And he walks up to this town, and there's this big gate that enters the town. There's this big gate that enters the town, and the rabbi walks up to the gate, and he knocks on the gate. And a guard yells down from the tower on top of the gate and says, "Who are you? And what are you here to do?" Who are you? And what are you here to do? The rabbi looks at him, looks at his disciples, and says, "What are they paying you to be a guard at this tower?" The guard looks at him confused. And the rabbi says, "Whatever they're paying you, I'll double it. To have you stand outside of my bedroom every single morning and say, 'Who are you and what are you here to do?'" And so he got that guard, he brought him back to his house, and he had this guard stationed outside of his room every day to ask him when he got out of bed in the morning, "Who are you and what are you here to do?" Why did the rabbi do that? Because he understood, if I answer the question, who am I, my identity, right? And what am I here to do, my purpose, my meaning, then I will get out of bed in the morning. So what I'm going to leave you with tonight is, just a couple of reflection questions. And maybe if you wanted, if you're watching this at home, we're unfortunately not going to have music tonight because of our technical difficulties. So what we can do instead is, if you're at home, just to turn on some praise and worship music or something as you listen to these reflection questions, and just pray through these. So the first one: what are you currently placing your identity in? Is it a relationship? Is it school? Is it winning the affirmation of others? Is it social media? So number one, where are you currently placing your identity in? Number two, in what ways can you lay that identity aside to choose your deepest identity, which is a son or daughter of God? And then number three, how does this identity as a son or daughter of God give your life purpose and meaning for getting out of bed in the morning? All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
For those of you watching from home, because of our technical difficulties, we are going to still do worship, but we're going to do kind of a stripped down version so that we don't blow up your speakers while you're praying. So I'm going to invite up Emma and Drew to come lead you in worship, and invite you to get into a posture of prayer, whether that's sitting on your couch, or maybe you want to stand up and pray with us, or even if you just wanted to get out your journal and reflect on those questions while we're singing up here, while they're singing up here, just invite you into that time of prayer.
for Jesus is greater. He can do all things. All those against him will fall, for our God is stronger. He can do all things. No higher name we can call, for Jesus is greater. He can do all things. All those against him will fall, for our God is stronger. He can do all things. No higher name we can call, for Jesus is greater. We can do all things, for we trust in our God. And through his unfailing love, we will not be shaken. We will not be shaken. We will not be shaken. For we trust in our God. And through his unfailing love, we will not be shaken. We will not be shaken. We will not be shaken. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, and holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. Jesus, Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. And great are you, Lord. Sing and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise, pour out praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise, pour out praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord.
Heavenly Father, we just praise you and thank you for this night, for this time to reflect on who we are as your sons and as your daughters. And we pray, Lord, that we might not be forgetful of your love for us, not for what we do, not for our output, but just for who we are. Fill us with your grace, Lord, and your strength to get out of bed each morning, ready to serve you, out of love for you. In your name, amen. Okay, cool. Am I even in the camera shot? I just sit over here. There we go. Thanks for watching Rise tonight, guys. We really enjoyed having you here. A few announcements before we sign off. Like I said in the beginning, I realized that the mic was so loud that maybe you didn't hear anything that I said. But this happens once a month, and it's put on by Good Company, which is a ministry out of the St. Lawrence Center. And our mission is basically just to foster connection with each other and then with our God. And that's why we come here once a month for Rise, to deepen our relationship with God and to deepen our reflection on who He is and who we are. So we hope that you come next month, which the topic is, what is the next best step? So we're going to be talking about not necessarily thinking 5 years ahead or a month ahead or a week ahead, but what is the next thing in front of me, the next right decision? And just as a little teaser, we miss you all. We miss having you in the same place. And so we are hoping that next month we can do a Rise in person outdoors. So stay tuned for that. And the other couple of things that I want to announce is Goodco is putting together a live treasure hunt or like Amazing Race thing. We don't know what we're calling it. We keep calling it the Amazing Race. We also keep calling it Treasure Hunt. Maybe I'm the only one that calls it Treasure Hunt. I don't know. But you can register your team on goodcoku.com. And basically there's going to be clues all throughout the city of Lawrence. And the team that gets to the end, to the finish line first, is going to get $350. So if you're like, man, I want some money, why not sign up? Go online, do that tonight. The registration is open for that. And then the other thing is every Friday, we want to give you free stuff because we like doing that. So on Friday mornings from 8 a.m. to 11, we're giving out free coffee and pastries and bagels right outside. So please walk by. If you're on Daisy Hill, literally just cut right through, and it's a shorter way to get to Jayhawk Boulevard anyway. And we'd love to meet you and get to know you. That's about it. Thanks for tuning in. We love you all, and hopefully we see you in person next